Robert sat on the porch of his withered farmhouse, watching the sun rise over the fields. At 78 years old, he was a Korean War veteran who had spent many decades in solitude. His home was filled with memories of a different time, with walls that echoed stories only he could tell. The farmhouse, surrounded by rolling hills and tall grass, had become both a sanctuary and a prison for him. He liked it that way, quiet, away from the hustle and bustle of town. Yet, there was an emptiness that lingered in the air, like dust settling on forgotten treasures. For 20 years, Robert had turned down every invitation to the annual memorial parade held in honor of those who served in Korea. Friends and neighbors urged him to join them, but Robert brushed their suggestions aside. "I don't need anyone feeling sorry for me," he would say, his voice firm yet tinged with unspoken pain. To Robert, attending the parade felt like exposing himself to pity, a feeling he loathed more than anything. Little did he know that his story had not gone unnoticed. One day, members of a local motorcycle club called the Iron Patriots stumbled across an article in the newspaper. It detailed the 12 men from their county who served bravely in Korea, but it also noted that Robert was the only one still alive who had never attended the parade. The club members were all veterans themselves. They understood what it meant to carry such a heavy past. Instead of sending yet another invitation to Robert, Hector, the club president, decided to take a different approach. Hector drove out to Robert's farmhouse one Saturday morning. He didn't have an agenda or a grand speech prepared. He simply wanted to connect. As Hector approached the porch, he noticed how worn out it looked, just like Robert himself. When Hector asked if he could sit down for a while, Robert hesitated but eventually nodded. They settled into silence for a moment before conversation flowed naturally between them. For 3 hours, they talked about Korea, the mud, the cold, and the raw memories that never seemed to fade away. Hector shared stories of camaraderie among his fellow soldiers, while Robert recounted tales of surviving harsh winters and long nights filled with uncertainty. Though they came from different backgrounds and experiences, there was an understanding that formed between them, a bond forged in shared history. As weeks passed, Hector returned every Saturday without fail. Each visit deepened their friendship as they exchanged laughter and life lessons on that old porch. Slowly but surely, Robert began to open up about his life beyond the war, his dreams as a young man, and how those dreams sometimes felt shattered by reality. After several visits, Hector brought along 2 other members from Iron Patriots. They were welcoming and friendly, eager to include Robert in their conversations about motorcycles, the rumble of engines and open roads sparking something new within him. For the first time in years, Robert felt curiosity bubbling up inside him about something other than his painful past. The weeks rolled on until Memorial Day morning arrived unexpectedly fast. As dawn broke with soft hues of orange and pink filling the sky, Robert woke up feeling different, lighter somehow. He picked up his phone at 6 a.m. and called Hector with surprising conviction. "I think I'm ready." Just those simple words changed everything. Without hesitation or words wasted, Hector called upon his fellow club members to gather at dawn outside Robert's farmhouse. When 43 motorcycles roared up the gravel driveway shortly after sunrise, it was a sight unlike any other for both Robert and the town nearby. As Robert climbed into the sidecar of Hector's bike at the front of the formation, emotion surged within him. A mixture of excitement and nerves danced through his veins. He looked out at all those bikes lined up like proud warriors ready for battle. This was not just a ride, but an escort filled with honor and respect. The townsfolk slowly began to emerge from their homes as they heard the thundering sound of engines approaching. Curiosity painted on their faces as they witnessed this unexpected tribute unfold before them. Neither had seen anything quite like it before. Neither had Robert ever felt so alive. Today would mark a new chapter, a chance to finally embrace not just his past, but also community ties he had spent so long avoiding. As he rode alongside Hector through town, Robert realized he wasn't alone anymore. He had brothers beside him once again. For 2 decades, Robert had kept himself away from the annual memorial parade, where people gathered to honor the brave men who had served in Korea. Each year, he received invitations from friends and neighbors, each one filled with the hope that he would finally join them. But with every polite refusal, a quiet resolve filled his heart. "They just want to pity me," he would mutter under his breath, as he watched others prepare for the festivities in town. For Robert, pride was a fragile thing, and he guarded it fiercely. To step out into the crowd would mean subjecting himself to all the sympathetic glances and whispered conversations about loss. He had fought hard to maintain his independence after returning from the war, a struggle that shaped him into the man he was today, a sturdy shell, but one that was beginning to crack at the edges. The farmhouse stood as a testament to his solitary life, and from its porch, Robert observed how other families reveled in the joy of camaraderie, while he retreated into memories that haunted him like shadows. As the years wore on, attending the parade felt like an impossible task. The honor associated with participation seemed overshadowed by invisible chains of shame and sadness. Each year, when the parade day approached, Robert's heart would often race with anxiety. It wasn't just about attending. It was about confronting decades of unresolved feelings that were wrapped tightly around his experiences in Korea. The mud, the cold nights, and the friends lost along the way settled heavily on his shoulders, too heavy for an old man to bear in front of a crowd. People tried to reach him, friends who lived nearby or veterans who wanted him to join their company, but Robert's reply was always the same. "I don't need anyone feeling sorry for me." His voice carried the weight of conviction, yet beneath it lay an undeniable loneliness. He knew they meant well, but their kindness felt suffocating. It reminded him of everything he had lost rather than what he could gain from reconnecting. As years passed in this manner, whispers grew louder among townsfolk about Robert's absence. "He's missing out," they would say with hushed concern, rarely understanding why he clung to his isolation. For them, this annual event represented healing and remembrance. For Robert, it was a minefield, fraught with too many risks and emotions long buried. During a particular year when the newspaper article caught the eyes of the Iron Patriots Motorcycle Club, he thought little of their interest. His name appeared alongside a list of other veterans, all of whom were dead but one, him. That single mention stirred curiosity among local veterans, many of whom also found solace in their shared experiences. Yet they remained unaware of the depths of Robert's reluctance to engage. Hector, the club president, decided early on that sending another invitation wouldn't do much good. Instead, he resolved to connect on a more personal level. On that quiet Saturday morning, when Hector arrived at Robert's farmhouse, he took note of how much time had flown since anyone had shared real conversation with Robert. Hector's visit would prove pivotal, not just for Robert but for both of their paths moving forward. Hector's genuine approach was unexpected for Robert, who was accustomed to suggestions laced with pity. Sitting quietly on his porch without an agenda or reason immediately put Robert at ease, because there was no expectation or pressure binding him to perform or conform. As they talked for hours about life, about Korea and all its harsh realities, Robert found himself slowly peeling back the layers he'd built around years of isolation. The conversations became a bridge over the troubled waters of his past. In those moments, he spoke about things he hadn't shared in too long, the laughter of fellow soldiers on difficult nights, and what it felt like when those laughter-filled moments turned somber with loss. Most importantly, in Hector's presence, Robert began to see that camaraderie could exist beyond the boundaries he'd constructed. With every meeting, doubts started to fade like early morning mist under a rising sun. While Robert remained reluctant to directly discuss the parade itself, each visit chipped away at his stubborn resolve. The motorcycle club members brought life into his lonely farmhouse. Writing stories circulated like air between them as Robert explored what these friendships truly meant. Before long, Saturday talks evolved into something deeper, and curiosity about motorcycles began to spark within Robert, a flicker of joy igniting among all those heavy memories he had carried alone for too long. And as he allowed this small flame of connection to grow brighter, something inside began to shift for him. With Memorial Day looming in the distance, it seemed that an unexpected journey lay ahead, a journey towards rediscovering community and breaking free from the chains of solitude that had bound him for years. The local newspaper article that sparked the interest of the Iron Patriots Motorcycle Club was unassuming in its layout, nestled among other community announcements and events. Yet, for the members of this club, the mention of Robert stood out like a solitary star in a night sky. The Iron Patriots were not just an ordinary motorcycle group. They were a brotherhood of veterans who had served in various conflicts, each carrying their own stories and scars from the battlefield. They understood the weight of memory, the heaviness of loss, and the need for camaraderie that came from shared experiences. As they scanned the article, they learned that Robert was the last surviving member of a dozen men from their county who had fought bravely in Korea. It struck them how someone who had endured so much could remain isolated while others gathered to honor their sacrifices. The club members nodded solemnly, recognizing the importance of reaching out to someone like Robert, a fellow veteran who might be lost in his own thoughts and memories. Hector, the president of the Iron Patriots, felt an immediate pull to do something about it. He knew well how easy it was for veterans to slip through the cracks of community life after returning from war. Many struggled silently with their pasts, feeling disconnected from those who had not shared similar experiences. Hector's heart ached for Robert. He could sense that behind the stubborn facade lay a man burdened by unspoken pain. "Let's go see him," Hector suggested during one of their regular meetings at a local diner. The other members nodded in agreement, but Hector felt that it was crucial for someone to make a personal connection first, someone who could approach Robert without any pressure or agenda. So he took it upon himself. Driving out to Robert's farmhouse was both daunting and exhilarating for Hector. The road wound through fields and forests, leading to a single structure that stood strong amidst nature's beauty, but also appeared steeped in solitude. As he parked his motorcycle and approached the porch, Hector felt a strange mix of anticipation and trepidation. Would Robert welcome him? Would he slam the door in his face? When Hector finally introduced himself and asked if he could sit down for a while, Robert hesitated initially but eventually nodded, allowing Hector to share space with him on that weathered porch. In those first moments, Hector took note of Robert's demeanor, a blend of skepticism and curiosity. Over time, as they talked about their shared experiences in Korea, the mud, the cold nights spent huddled around small fires, Hector saw glimpses of vulnerability beneath Robert's tough exterior. Their conversations became a safe harbor where they discussed heart-wrenching memories without judgment or pity. Instead of discussing combat tactics or mission details, they delved into emotions tied to those long-ago nights filled with uncertainty. Hector returned week after week because he understood how important it was for Robert to feel seen and heard without being forced into uncomfortable situations like parades or public gatherings. Each visit helped dismantle some defenses Robert had built around himself over the years. As word spread among other members of the Iron Patriots about Hector's efforts to connect with Robert, they expressed eagerness to meet him too. 7 Saturdays into Hector's visits, he brought along 2 other club members who were equally passionate about reaching out to fellow veterans. At first hesitant, but ultimately welcoming, Robert found himself intrigued by their motorcycles, machines that roared with life and freedom. The Iron Patriots were not just there to ride, they were there to create bonds that transcended mere friendship. For many veterans like Robert, those connections could mean everything: a lifeline back into a world they had thought they'd left behind forever. As Memorial Day approached, excitement bubbled within the club about their unique plans for honoring not just those lost but also Robert himself. The idea of escorting him during the parade began taking shape, a show of respect not just for his service, but also for his journey towards healing. It was no longer just about attending an event. It became about rekindling hope and connection where isolation had once reigned supreme. As anticipation grew amongst them all, including Robert, Hector couldn't help but feel that something profound was on the horizon, a moment when hesitation would give way to belonging. Through this newfound friendship with the Iron Patriots, Robert began contemplating what it meant to step outside his self-imposed boundaries and embrace both his past and present in ways he had never imagined possible before. Hector leaned back in his chair at the diner, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the clinking of dishes. The Iron Patriots had gathered there for their regular meeting, but today something weighed heavily on his heart. He glanced around at the other members, each one a veteran with stories etched into their faces. They had all seen their share of battles, both on the field and in life. Yet, as they discussed potential ideas for this year's Memorial Parade, Hector couldn't shake the feeling that doing more was necessary, especially for Robert. The article they had read in the local newspaper had sparked a strong sense of responsibility within Hector. It wasn't just about honoring those who had passed. It was also about reaching out to the living, particularly to Robert, who had remained isolated for so long. Others in the group were eager to extend another formal invitation to the parade, but Hector sought a different approach. "Let's not send him another invitation," he interjected, determination burning in his eyes. "What Robert needs isn't another reminder of what he's missing. He needs someone to actually be there for him." The other members paused, taken aback by Hector's conviction. They nodded in agreement, realizing that Hector was right. Robert needed connection rather than pity. It was time to forge a genuine relationship instead of relying on conventional gestures that hadn't worked in the past. "I'll go see him," Hector announced, a plan forming in his mind. His fellow members gave him encouraging nods, understanding how important this was. They knew that Hector could make that personal connection with Robert without an agenda or expectations weighing them down. The next morning, with the sun shining brightly overhead, Hector rode out to Robert's farmhouse. He felt both excited and anxious as he navigated the winding roads that led him to the outskirts of town. The landscape changed from bustling streets to peaceful fields dotted with wildflowers. As he approached Robert's home, he couldn't help but admire the strength of the farmhouse standing resolutely against nature's elements. Parking his motorcycle outside, Hector took a deep breath and approached the porch with cautious optimism. When he knocked gently on the door, he felt his heart race. Would Robert welcome him? Or would he turn him away like he had done with so many others? As the door creaked open, Robert stood there with a mix of curiosity and skepticism clouding his expression. "What do you want?" he asked bluntly. Hector softened his gaze and replied, "I'm Hector from the Iron Patriots. I read about you in the newspaper, and I wanted to ask if I could sit on your porch for a while." Robert hesitated but eventually stepped aside, allowing Hector to take a seat. The two settled into an unusual silence at first, both men aware of the weight that hung in the air. But as Hector began to share stories about his own time in Korea, the mud, the cold, and the camaraderie that came from shared hardships, the tension began to dissipate. For 3 hours, they talked as if no time had passed since their service days. They shared laughter mixed with solemnity over memories that haunted them both, tales of friendship forged in adversity and sorrow experienced over lost brothers. Hector took care not to mention the parade during their conversation. He wanted Robert to feel free from any expectations or pressure. Instead, their discussions became a refuge where they could be vulnerable without judgment or pity, a place where both men began peeling back their tough exteriors. As weeks went by, Hector returned to Robert's porch every Saturday like clockwork. With each visit, he noticed small changes in Robert's demeanor, a flicker of light returning to his eyes, and a willingness to engage more deeply in conversations. It became clear that this gentle persistence was breaking down walls built over years of isolation and pain. After several weeks of sharing stories and laughter on that porch, Hector decided it was time to introduce Robert to more members of the Iron Patriots. On one bright Saturday morning, he brought along two fellow veterans, who were equally eager to connect with Robert. As they arrived on their motorcycles, their engines rumbling like distant thunder, Robert's curiosity was piqued. Though hesitant at first, Robert found himself intrigued by their bikes. The gleaming chrome and vibrant colors evoked feelings of freedom he hadn't experienced in decades. As conversations flowed naturally between them all, Robert began asking questions about riding and enjoying camaraderie once more. It felt like rediscovering a piece of himself long buried under layers of solitude. By choosing casual conversations over formal invitations, Hector created an environment where Robert could reconnect with parts of himself he thought were lost forever. It wasn't merely about attending a parade anymore. It was about building relationships and rediscovering hope through meaningful connections, one Saturday at a time. As Hector settled himself onto the worn porch of Robert's farmhouse, he felt the weight of the moment. The sun had begun its descent, casting a warm golden glow over the fields that surrounded them. For both men, this was an uncharted territory. Two veterans meeting not out of obligation, but out of the need for connection. Robert watched Hector with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. He had been alone for so long that even the thought of sharing his experiences felt foreign. But there was something genuine in Hector's demeanor that encouraged Robert to let his guard down, if only slightly. As they began their conversation, Hector started with a simple question about Robert's life on the farm. "Looks like you've got a peaceful setup here," Hector remarked, gesturing at the sprawling fields and tall grasses swaying gently in the breeze. Robert shrugged. "It's quiet," he replied. "Sometimes too quiet." The words hung between them, opening a door to shared understanding. And just like that, they dove into memories, the sacred ground where their hearts were laid bare. They spoke not about politics or strategies. Instead, they exchanged stories from their time in Korea, the harsh winters and muddy trenches that seemed to linger far longer than any physical scars ever could. For 3 hours, the porch became their sanctuary. They spoke as if they were trying to reclaim lost years through shared narratives, Hector recounting tales of daring missions and comrades who had become brothers in arms, while Robert shared moments of tension on those cold nights when uncertainty gnawed at him like a relentless hunger. "I remember one night," Robert began slowly, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "We were huddled around a fire, our boots soaked through from walking in mud all day. I could see my breath in front of me, and I thought about how far away home felt. We laughed just to keep our spirits up." Hector nodded knowingly, feeling a connection forming through their shared experiences. "I can relate," he said softly. "Those little moments held us together when everything else felt broken." As Robert spoke about his struggles, friends lost forever and ghosts haunting his memories, Hector listened intently without interrupting or redirecting the conversation toward lighter topics. Instead, he honored those memories. He offered acknowledgement rather than pity. It was clear that both men were treading on sacred ground. At one point during their talk, Hector found himself reflecting on why he had come to visit Robert at all. That deep-seated sense of responsibility towards fellow soldiers didn't merely stem from being part of the Iron Patriots. It came from understanding what it meant to feel isolated after returning home. "You know," Hector said thoughtfully after a pause, "it can be easy for veterans like us to feel alone when we get home, to think no one understands what we went through." Robert looked up sharply. There was an echo in those words that resonated deeply within him. Exactly, he replied quietly before turning gaze back toward the horizon. People think they understand pain just because they care, but unless you've walked through it yourself. The conversation flowed seamlessly between memories and reflections, binding them together more tightly than either could have anticipated initially. By sharing laughter alongside sorrow, telling war stories filled with camaraderie but also loss, they created a space where vulnerability flourished without fear. By the time shadows began elongating across the porch as daylight waned into dusk, both men realized how much time had passed. 3 hours had flown by like minutes spent in good company among friends who understood. With each visit moving forward, the next Saturday and many thereafter, Hector returned not only to listen, but also to share more of himself, while encouraging Robert to find joy again amidst the past's heavy load. A bond forged over time spent discussing older bikes parked nearby or reminiscing about laughter-filled nights with fellow soldiers. In this way, their friendship began forming roots strong enough to weather any storm, a lifeline thrown into waters once thought too turbulent for either man to navigate alone. Through these conversations filled with understanding rather than judgment or pity, Robert realized that perhaps healing wasn't just about facing his past head-on. Sometimes it was simply about sharing it with someone who could bear witness, not as an outsider, but as a brother in arms, who understood every word spoken from experience lived. Hector returned to Robert's farmhouse every Saturday like clockwork. The routine became a cherished ritual for both men, each visit adding depth to their budding friendship. As Hector pulled into the gravel driveway on his motorcycle, he could see Robert waiting on the porch, a hint of a smile forming on his lips. It was a small but significant change from the guarded demeanor Robert had exhibited during their first meeting. With each visit, they found themselves sharing not just stories of the past, but also laughter and moments of lightheartedness that had long eluded Robert. One sunny Saturday morning, Hector arrived with a box of donuts from the local bakery, offering them with a flourish as if he were presenting a trophy. "I figured we could use some fuel for our stories today," he joked, grinning. Robert chuckled, accepting the gift with a nod of appreciation. As they sat together on the porch, the warm sun shining down and the sweet smell of donuts in the air, Robert felt something within him begin to thaw. The memories of war still lingered like shadows in his mind, but Hector's presence brought a sense of warmth that made it easier to share. Their conversations moved seamlessly between recollections of Korea and tales from their lives post-war, stories about their families, dreams that never materialized, and moments of joy that punctuated their struggles. One Saturday, they found themselves reminiscing about old girlfriends. Hector recounted an awkward yet funny date involving a disastrous movie choice that ended with him spilling popcorn all over himself. "I'll never live that down," Hector laughed, shaking his head. Robert laughed too, the sound echoing off the farmhouse walls like music in the quiet afternoon air. "Sounds like you had quite the charm," Robert teased back, finally allowing himself to poke fun at Hector's expense as well. It was moments like these that gradually chipped away at the walls Robert had built around himself over decades of solitude. As weeks turned into months, Hector noticed more significant changes in Robert. The flicker of life returned to his eyes. He began to express curiosity about activities outside his farmhouse walls. One Saturday morning, while discussing motorcycles, Robert asked Hector about riding techniques and safety tips. "I used to ride bikes when I was younger," he admitted sheepishly. "Never thought I would again." Hector's heart soared at this revelation. "You should take it up again. You'd love it," he encouraged enthusiastically. "There's nothing quite like hitting the open road with friends beside you." The more they talked about riding and camaraderie, the more Robert began to envision possibilities beyond his farm. Images of fresh air rushing past him, while gripping handlebars tightly, as he rode alongside other veterans from Iron Patriots. As Memorial Day approached, excitement bubbled within Hector about including Robert in their plans for the parade. He wanted Robert to experience not just participation but connection, a chance to belong again among those who understood him best. On one particular Saturday afternoon, after sharing several laughs over stories from their youth and memories from Korea, Hector decided it was time to broach the topic directly without pressure or expectation. "You know," he started cautiously, "the parade is coming up soon. It would be great if you could join us." Robert's expression shifted slightly. Uncertainty flashed across his face before he quickly masked it with indifference. "I don't know," he replied hesitantly. Hector leaned forward slightly, meeting Robert's gaze directly. "It's not just an event. It's a gathering of brothers, men who've shared our experiences and understand what we've been through." Robert looked away for a moment, as if weighing his options carefully against decades' worth of isolation versus newfound companionship brewing between them. Slowly but surely, he began considering what this might mean for him, to step out beyond those bounds he had placed around his life. "Maybe," Robert finally replied after several moments of silence filled only by birds chirping nearby and soft rustling leaves dancing in gentle winds. That word hung in the air between them, a small yet powerful acknowledgement that change was possible after years spent avoiding it. With each passing week leading up to Memorial Day, their bond grew stronger as they shared both laughter and challenges together, a testament that friendships can blossom even late in life when nurtured by patience and understanding amidst vulnerability. By allowing himself to trust again through these exchanges filled with stories, both joyous and painful alike, Robert began finding hope where once only darkness resided, a reminder that sometimes healing comes through connection rather than confrontation alone. As the warm sunlight dappled the porch of Robert's farmhouse, the atmosphere was charged with a newfound sense of possibility. Hector had been visiting for several weeks now, and their bond had grown from tentative conversations into a comfortable rhythm of companionship. This particular Saturday felt different. There was an openness in Robert that hinted at curiosity bubbling beneath his usually guarded exterior. After enjoying the customary box of donuts, Hector leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing on his lips, as he watched Robert take an interest in the motorcycle parked proudly on the gravel beside the house. It was a classic model, gleaming under the sun with its chrome accents and deep paint, a symbol of adventure and freedom. For Robert, who had spent decades rooted in solitude, it became a focal point for exploration within himself. "You know," Hector began casually, noticing Robert's gaze linger on the bike, "there's nothing quite like riding. The wind in your face, the openness of the road, it really makes you feel alive." Robert's eyes flicked back to Hector, a spark igniting in them that Hector had not seen before. "I used to ride when I was younger," he admitted, his voice a mixture of nostalgia and longing. "Had a bike back then, a real beauty too, but that seems like a lifetime ago." For a moment, silence enveloped them as memories danced through Robert's mind, images of warm summer days, riding alongside friends, and feeling that sense of freedom that seemed so foreign now. Hector leaned forward, sensing an opportunity to nurture this budding interest. "You should consider getting back into it," he encouraged earnestly. "There are plenty of us in Iron Patriots who love to ride. We'd be happy to show you the ropes again." Robert nodded slowly, reflecting on the idea. He hadn't allowed himself to think about motorcycles or riding in years. It felt like another life altogether. But the thought stirred something inside him, a flicker of excitement and connection that had been dormant for far too long. Maybe I will," he murmured, surprise at his own willingness evident in his tone. Encouraged by Robert's tentative admission, Hector decided to dive deeper into the subject. "How about next week? We could take a little ride together, just around the neighborhood. You can see what it feels like again," he proposed warmly. The suggestion hung in the air as Robert weighed it carefully. Each passing second stretched out like a mile between them, filled with unacknowledged hopes and fears. Finally, he sighed deeply and said, "All right, let's give it a shot." Hector felt a wave of triumph wash over him. This was more than just a casual outing. It represented a shift in Robert's willingness to step outside the walls he had meticulously constructed around himself. In the following weeks, Robert began to immerse himself more deeply in conversations about writing. He listened intently as Hector shared tales of long-distance journeys taken with other veterans, stories filled with laughter around campfires, and friendships forged on open highways. The allure of camaraderie became increasingly appealing to Robert as discussions unfolded between them. He yearned for those connections he had missed during years of isolation. On one particular Saturday morning, Hector surprised Robert by arriving with gear, a sturdy helmet, and leather gloves that belonged to him but were now meant for his friend. "This will help you feel ready for your first ride," Hector exclaimed as he handed them over excitedly. Robert chuckled at how things had changed so quickly. From someone avoiding social contact for years to embracing adventure with open arms, it was almost surreal. He tried on the gear, laughing at how awkward he felt yet simultaneously thrilled, like a child stepping onto a playground for the first time. With every interaction regarding motorcycles, Hector saw how hope was blossoming within Robert. The man who once sat alone on his porch now visibly engaged in life beyond its confines. As Memorial Day approached, Hector couldn't help but feel excited about introducing Robert to more members of Iron Patriots. This would further solidify his place among brothers who understood every piece of their shared history. Their conversations moved effortlessly from one topic to another, giving way to dreams yet unspoken, but waiting patiently within Robert's heart, transforming their bond into roots capable of weathering any storm life threw their way. In allowing himself this vulnerability, while sharing laughter intertwined with hope-filled aspirations once again sparked life within him where darkness had once thrived, reminding both men that healing doesn't always require confronting demons alone. Sometimes friendship is all it takes to ignite courage hidden beneath layers built by past experiences. As Memorial Day approached, Robert found himself in a swirl of emotions. The days leading up to the event felt heavier than usual, filled with significant moments of reflection. Sitting on his porch with the sun setting behind him, painting the sky in hues of gold and purple, he couldn't help but think about the life he had chosen for himself, one marked by solitude and avoidance. But now, everything felt different. With each conversation he shared with Hector, and the growing camaraderie formed through the Iron Patriots, Robert began to reconsider the choices he had made over the years. He reflected on all those moments he had turned down invitations to the memorial parade, perceiving them as reminders of his losses rather than opportunities for healing. The stories Hector told during their laughter-filled conversations had chipped away at the walls of isolation he had built around himself. Now, they felt less like a fortress and more like a cocoon, urging him to emerge and embrace life once more. One morning, as he sipped his coffee while enjoying the chorus of birds chirping nearby, Robert felt a stark awareness wash over him, a notion that perhaps it was time to confront his past instead of running from it. He stared out at the fields that stretched before him, recalling memories from long ago, both joyous and sorrowful. It was in the stillness that he found clarity. He remembered his younger self, who had ridden triumphantly on his motorcycle, who had connected with friends deeply through shared experiences. Feeling a sudden rush of courage, Robert picked up his phone as the crisp morning light spilled through his window. With every ring echoing in his ear, enthusiasm surged in him like adrenaline coursing through his body before a ride. Finally, Hector answered. "Hey, Robert." "Morning." Hector's cheerful voice greeted him. "Hi, Hector," Robert replied, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "I've been doing some thinking, with Memorial Day coming up." "That's great to hear. What's on your mind?" Hector prompted. Taking a deep breath, Robert pushed through the lingering doubts that whispered that this moment was too soon. "I think I might be ready to join you all for the parade." Silence hung between them for just a beat before Hector erupted into an excited affirmation. "Really? That's wonderful news. I knew you'd come around." Robert chuckled softly, surprised at how good it felt to share this decision openly rather than hold it within himself. "Yeah, well, I can't say I'm not nervous about it. Hey, that's normal. We'll be right there with you. Plus, riding with us will be just like old times," Hector reassured him warmly. In the following days, anticipation bubbled within Robert as Memorial Day drew closer. He prepared himself not just mentally, but emotionally for what this day would mean. A chance to reconnect with fellow veterans and honor those lost while also rediscovering parts of himself long buried under layers of solitary living. Hector continued to visit, sharing even more stories of veterans and their experiences during parades past. With each tale, Robert found another piece of motivation to embrace the upcoming event fully. He practiced riding on Hector's bike during their outings, harnessing the feeling of freedom again until it began to feel familiar. As he rode side by side with Hector in practice runs around the neighborhood, laughter and encouragement filled the air. The bond they had forged wasn't just about motorcycles. It was about understanding and healing together as brothers in arms. For Robert, it symbolized far more than just participating in a parade. It represented a leap toward reintegration into life he feared he had lost forever. Finally, on Memorial Day morning, Robert woke early with disbelief washing over him. Excitement buzzed in his chest as he got dressed. Memories cascaded through his mind, racing alongside images of friends lost in battles fought long ago, returning hope where despair had once lingered. He felt alive again. When Hector arrived at dawn along with 42 other club members lined up in front of his farmhouse, with gleaming bikes ready for the ride to town, Robert stepped outside with a grin lighting up his face. With each revving engine and every encouraging word exchanged among fellow veterans, he realized how far he had come from that lonely man sitting on his porch seeking solitude. As he climbed into the sidecar of Hector's bike, ready to lead the procession into town for the first time after so many years of avoidance, Robert felt emotion swell within him: pride, camaraderie, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. It was time to celebrate bravery not only in others, but also within himself. The bravery of confronting fears head-on, with a community of support beside him. In that moment, he understood he was finally participating, not just in a parade but also in life again, a return home marked by remembrance and healing reverberating throughout the town like an echo from days gone by. The morning dawned bright and clear on Memorial Day, the air crisp with anticipation. As Robert stood by the window, preparing for his first parade, he could hardly contain the mix of excitement and nervousness swirling within him. He had made the decision to ride alongside Hector and the Iron Patriots, but he did not know what to expect. It was a new step into a world he had long avoided. Meanwhile, Hector buzzed with energy at his home, racing against time as he gathered the members of the Iron Patriots for a surprise escort. The news of Robert's commitment spread quickly among the club members, transforming any last remnants of hesitation into enthusiasm. "This is our chance to honor Robert properly," Hector declared as he stood before his fellow veterans in their makeshift meeting space. Within moments, everyone jumped into action. Bikes were revved and polished. Leather jackets gleamed in the sunlight as each member made their way to Hector's garage with smiles plastered across their faces. This wasn't just another ride. It was a celebration of courage and friendship, an act honoring both their shared history and Robert's newfound willingness to embrace life again. "All right, listen up," Hector shouted over the sounds of chattering veterans and buzzing engines. "Today isn't just about riding. It's about making sure Robert feels supported. We're going to meet him at his farmhouse to give him one hell of an escort into town. Cheers erupted from the group, affirming their excitement at being able to stand alongside Robert as he took this pivotal step in his life. They all understood how meaningful this moment was, not only for Robert but also as a reminder of their own journeys through camaraderie forged in battle. As they left Hector's garage, lining up their motorcycles in formation outside, each member couldn't help but feel a sense of pride swelling within them. The roar of engines filled the air like a symphony announcing their arrival on this momentous occasion. Back at Robert's farmhouse, anticipation built within him as he tightened the straps on his helmet and donned his riding gloves. The sight of Hector walking toward him brought an instant smile to his face. Hector's enthusiasm was infectious. "Are you ready?" Hector beamed, his excitement radiating. "I think so," Robert replied gingerly, but felt warmth blooming in his chest, an unexpected surge of confidence that came from knowing that he was no longer alone in facing this day. As they stepped outside together, the sight that greeted them took Robert's breath away. 43 motorcycles lined up along his driveway gleaming under the morning sun. He felt an overwhelming wave of emotions wash over him as each member called out friendly greetings and cheers. "What's all this?" Robert asked incredulously, unable to comprehend such an impressive show of support. "This is your parade," Hector grinned. "We're here to ride with you, together." Robert couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by gratitude as he looked around at all these faces that had come together just for him, a testament to how far he had come from isolation and solitude. In that moment, all doubts began to diminish. Instead, a feeling of belonging surged within him more powerful than ever before. Once settled in the sidecar of Hector's bike, a position that felt both thrilling and secure, Robert took a deep breath as they prepared to pull out onto the road. With engines roaring all around them like mighty beasts awakened from slumber, a rush of exhilaration sparked through him. As they rolled down the gravel driveway toward town amid cheers and waves from locals who had gathered along the route to witness such an extraordinary sight, the sight of brotherhood celebrating life, the weight on Robert's shoulders began drifting away. With every turn and every mile, they traveled side by side through familiar roads adorned now with fresh love and connectedness rather than memories clouded by loss. Robert realized how truly transformative this moment was. It symbolized release from years spent wrapped tightly in solitude, and recognition that he belonged once more among fellow veterans who shared experiences unspoken yet deeply understood. As they approached town with its vibrant decorations fluttering in anticipation of festivities ahead, a sea of red, white, and blue, Robert felt tears welling behind his eyes. These weren't tears born from sorrow but joy, a profound acknowledgement of what it meant to reconnect not just with those lost but also with himself at last. Riding proudly at the front alongside Hector amidst roaring engines surrounding them felt like coming home after years lost at sea. A journey finally fulfilled amidst laughter echoing through memories shared as brothers in arms celebrated bravery together once more beneath bright blue skies stretching wide overhead. The morning of Memorial Day dawned with a brilliance that colored the sky in shades of soft pink and bright orange. The sun peered over the horizon, illuminating Robert's farmhouse with a warm glow as nature awoke around him, birds chirping and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. It felt as if the world itself was celebrating this monumental day. Robert stood at his window, heart racing with anticipation while watching for the first signs of life beyond his farm. This was not just another day. It marked a significant turning point in his life, the day he would join Hector and the Iron Patriots for the parade. Fully dressed and helmet in hand, he replayed moments from his past when riding had given him freedom, something he left behind for far too long. As if on cue, he heard the distant roar of motorcycles approaching, a sound that grew louder with each passing second until it filled the air like a powerful symphony. Robert's heart swelled as he stepped outside to see what was unfolding before him. 50 yards down the gravel path leading to his farmhouse, An impressive line of 43 motorcycles appeared, gleaming like polished jewels in the morning light. The sheer sight took his breath away. Vibrant colors contrasting against a backdrop of fresh greenery made them look like they were taken straight out of a movie scene about camaraderie and adventure. The rumble of engines reverberated through him as he stood there, stunned by this show of support. These weren't just bikes. Each motorcycle represented a brotherhood, a connection forged through shared experiences and unspoken understanding among fellow veterans, who understood what it meant to serve and sacrifice. Hector led the procession at the front, waving enthusiastically as he shouted Robert's name above the cacophony of revving engines that surrounded them. "Robert! We're here for you!" The joy in Hector's voice echoed Robert's own swelling emotions, a mix of gratitude and awe that washed over him. As the club members rolled up to his farmhouse, smiles spread across their faces, while some called out friendly greetings or offered cheerful honks from their horns, each gesture reinforcing Robert's realization that today truly was about him. This unexpected show of connection began dissolving years of isolation in an instant. Robert blinked back tears as he felt an overwhelming wave wash over him, a potent combination of joy, pride, and acceptance unlike anything he had experienced in years. He took a deep breath. He wasn't alone anymore. His brothers were here beside him, ready to ride into town together. "Wow!" he finally managed to say aloud, still processing this grand gesture unfolding right before his eyes. He felt warmth surge within him as one by one they dismounted their bikes, approaching him with camaraderie flowing like electricity among them. "Ready for your first ride?" Hector grinned broadly as he stepped forward, helping strap Robert into his sidecar with practiced care while others prepared their own bikes behind them. "I think so," Robert replied hesitantly but found confidence growing within when surrounded by these men who believed in him. With everyone gathered together around him offering words of encouragement or pats on his shoulder like ceremonial blessings passed down through generations before them, Robert felt reborn amidst all this affection directed toward him like rays reaching through clouds long shrouding joy from his life. Finally settled into place beside Hector on their bike, with engines revving around them creating harmonies filled with excitement, their small group prepared to roll out onto familiar roads lined now not just with memories, but new connections forged amongst those who once understood solitude too well themselves. As they glided forward toward town, where dozens awaited their arrival alongside vibrant decorations fluttering enthusiastically above bustling streets, a sea of red, white, and blue, Robert felt more alive than ever. It wasn't merely participation, but restoration transcending old ghosts tethered tightly until this very moment. The waves from smiling townsfolk greeted them along every turn as they traveled together down well-trod paths. They erupted into cheers upon seeing Robert arriving amongst bicycles shining brightly under sunlight, alongside members proudly representing both communities' spirit blended seamlessly together, celebrating bravery throughout lives dedicated serving country along countless days spent fighting through adversities faced during wartime. The wide grin spreading across Robert's face mirrored Hector's own exuberance radiating outward. It transformed what could have been bittersweet remembrance into a profound acknowledgement celebrating connection after years lost navigating life too cautiously behind walls constructed earlier away from potential friendships waiting patiently outside waiting for moments just like these. The rush that comes when overcoming fears realizes itself alive again amidst laughter shared beneath bright skies. Enveloping heartfelt bonds formed over time radiating warmth layered intricately intertwined telling stories yet untold experience deeply, and echoing forevermore throughout lives tied inseparably forever by unbreakable threads acquired only through time spent traversing paths walked hand in hand behind roars, echoing collectively forever through seasons changed at last becoming home once again found true connections formed anew joyfully reborn together on shining horizons ahead formed proudly traveling side by side towards brighter journeys still awaiting exploration ahead, yet untraveled past horizons anew, beckoning onward, endlessly awaiting discovery alongside newfound brothers reunited, recognizing every lesson learned. A long life's journey taken, happily traveling towards hope rekindled. Forevermore in vibrant skies stretching wide overhead, dancing along roads winding bright. The wide grin spreading across Robert's face mirrored Hector's own exuberance, radiating outward. It transformed what could have been bittersweet remembrance into a profound acknowledgement, celebrating connection after years lost navigating life too cautiously behind walls constructed earlier, away from potential friendships, waiting patiently outside, waiting for moments just like these. The rush that comes when overcoming fears realizes itself alive again amidst laughter shared beneath bright skies. Enveloping heartfelt bonds formed over time, radiating warmth, layered, intricately intertwined, telling stories yet untold, experience deeply, and echoing forevermore throughout lives, tied inseparably forever by unbreakable threads acquired only through time spent traversing paths walked hand in hand. Behind roars, echoing collectively forever through seasons changed, at last becoming home once again, found true connections formed anew, joyfully reborn together on shining horizons ahead, formed proudly, traveling side by side towards brighter journeys, still awaiting exploration ahead, yet untraveled past horizons anew, beckoning onward, endlessly awaiting discovery alongside newfound brothers reunited, recognizing every lesson learned. A long life's journey taken, happily traveling towards hope rekindled. Forevermore in vibrant skies stretching wide overhead, dancing along roads winding bright. As Robert settled into the sidecar of Hector's motorcycle, he felt a rush of emotions flood over him. A blend of excitement, anxiety, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. The rumble of 43 motorcycles around him created an exhilarating symphony. A sound that resonated deep within his soul, echoing the camaraderie he had long yearned for yet avoided for so many years. Hector glanced back at Robert with a beaming smile, his enthusiasm infectious. "Ready to ride?" he asked, and Robert nodded, a grin breaking across his face as he tightened his grip on the sidecar's handle. The engines roared to life together as they pulled away from the farmhouse, a powerful wave of united purpose swelling behind them. The procession moved smoothly down the gravel driveway and onto the road that led toward town. Each bump in the pavement sent small jolts through Robert's body, but instead of feeling discomfort, he reveled in the sensation. It was proof that he was alive and part of something greater than himself. This was not merely a ride, it was an awakening. As they traveled further along the road, proud veterans beside him on their bikes transformed familiar scenery into something vibrant and filled with life. The trees lining the path swayed gently in the breeze, while blossoms danced joyously. Nature itself seemed to celebrate this momentous occasion. Robert could feel a warmth spreading through him. He was finally experiencing what it meant to be part of a community that understood and valued shared history. Hector led them through town, their motorcycles gliding past shops and homes that suddenly looked more inviting than ever before. Locals emerged from their houses, waving flags and cheering loudly, an uplifting chorus welcoming Robert into this world he had steered clear of for too long. Children laughed and pointed in delight at the formation of bikes rolling by, adding to the festive atmosphere, reinforcing that today was not just about remembrance, but also about celebration. In that moment, all tension began melting away from Robert's shoulders, like morning fog under sunlight. He glanced around at his fellow riders, their faces lit up with joy made up of stories shared over countless Saturday mornings on his porch. Each one held a different tale but collectively created a tapestry rich in bravery and resilience. As they rode onward toward the heart of town, Robert felt connection echoing through each revving engine, each note resonating with memories shared among brothers who had faced similar battles both abroad and at home. He began reflecting on how this day symbolized more than just commemorating fallen soldiers. It represented his resurrection from years spent in isolation, reclaiming part of himself long neglected. When they reached the town square decorated vibrantly in red, white, and blue bunting fluttering above like cheers suspended in air waiting just for them. The heartbeats surrounding him thrummed loudly in unison with every beat of his own heart swelling inside him. Hector slowed down as they approached their designated spot leading into a parade already bustling with energy. A sea filled with veterans climbing onto floats, while community members gathered side by side applauding. The moment they came to a halt brought everything into sharp focus as voices echoed around him. Cheers erupted from excited townsfolk celebrating alongside local dignitaries, standing proudly near their podiums. As Robert disembarked from Hector's bike onto solid ground, the weight lifted completely off his shoulders. He felt as if he'd been granted new life amidst waves and waves of gratefulness washing over him like cool rain on sun-baked earth. Standing shoulder to shoulder next to Hector as other members joined them, at the front filled Robert's heart with pride. One by one, they embraced each other warmly. A ritual rooted deeply in understanding shaped by years spent navigating shadowy paths filled with unspoken burdens. The ghosts haunting their pasts began fading amidst laughter rising around them, now woven together tighter than ever before amidst this supportive community celebrating bravery once more beneath bright blue skies overhead. In those moments lined up proudly among friends reunited so many years later reminded him nothing could compare to connection found within knowing one wasn't alone anymore. It affirmed freedom emerged stronger when shared together among brothers who understood every thread binding lives continued tightly woven through journeys, taken hand in hand during good times yet still fighting together whenever darkness loomed ahead. Today marked not just remembrance, but rebirth surrounded by love emanating, brightly illuminating all paths traveled towards, healing waiting patiently ahead shining sharp against gray's once thickening shadows fading forevermore on horizons brightening once again ahead inviting exploration anew waiting just beyond every curve rising beyond shining roads beckoning onward Tawa. RD bonds forged anew rekindled hope ignited brightly revitalizing lives shared truly lived fully embraced forevermore. In those moments lined up proudly among friends reunited so many years later reminded him nothing could compare to connection found within knowing one wasn't alone anymore. It affirmed freedom emerged stronger when shared together among brothers who understood every thread binding lives continued tightly woven through journeys, taken hand in hand during good times yet still fighting together whenever darkness loomed ahead. Today marked not just remembrance, but rebirth surrounded by love emanating, brightly illuminating all paths traveled towards, healing waiting patiently ahead shining sharp against gray's once thickening shadows fading forevermore on horizons brightening once again ahead inviting exploration anew waiting just beyond every curve rising beyond shining roads beckoning onward Tawa. RD bonds forged anew rekindled hope ignited brightly revitalizing lives shared truly lived fully embraced forevermore. As Robert settled into the sidecar of Hector's motorcycle, the roar of the engines filled the air, echoing the heartbeat of a community coming together to honor their shared past. The motorcycles rumbled forward, leading a procession that felt monumental, not just for Robert, but for everyone involved. This was not just a parade, it was a celebration of courage, camaraderie, and remembrance. As they approached the town square, Robert could see the vibrant decorations fluttering in the breeze. Red, white, and blue banners lining the streets and flowers blooming in every corner. The atmosphere was electric with excitement as townsfolk gathered to witness the parade. Their cheers rang out like music in the air, blending with the sounds of revving engines to create a symphony dedicated to remembrance and honor. With each passing moment, Robert felt more alive than he had in years. The anxiety that had clung to him like a shadow began to dissipate as he absorbed the energy around him. He looked around at his fellow riders, men who had served alongside him or had faced their own battles, and realized he was no longer alone. They were all there for a common purpose, to celebrate those who had fought for their freedom and to support one another in their journeys toward healing. As they rolled through the town, locals waved flags enthusiastically, children ran alongside them with wide smiles, and families cheered from their porches. Robert could hardly process it all. It felt surreal, almost like a dream he never dared to imagine would come true. Every wave and shout of encouragement felt like an embrace, wrapping him in warmth and acceptance. In that moment, Robert reflected on how long he had kept himself isolated, avoiding connections and shunning opportunities for companionship. But now, surrounded by this incredible display of unity, he understood what he had been missing: a sense of belonging. It wasn't just about being part of the parade. It was about being part of something larger than himself, an extended family built on shared experiences and mutual understanding. As they approached the heart of town, where crowds thickened with anticipation, Robert's emotions swelled within him. Memories flooded back. Friends lost during wartime, moments of laughter shared around campfires. But instead of sorrow weighing him down, those recollections now transformed into tributes honoring both their bravery and sacrifice. When they finally reached their designated spot near the podium, where local dignitaries stood ready to speak, Hector slowed their bike to a stop. The sound of engines quieted gradually as Robert stepped out of the sidecar onto solid ground. The feeling was liberating. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Hector and other members of Iron Patriots, who surrounded him with pride. As applause erupted from the crowd welcoming them into this momentous occasion, a celebration transcending grief into joy, Robert's heart swelled with gratitude. Each handshake exchanged and each embrace shared symbolized respect not only for those lost but also for each other's journeys toward recovery. The mayor stepped forward to acknowledge not just those who had served but also to highlight Robert's brave decision to join them after years spent away from such gatherings. "Today," she announced warmly, "we honor our heroes who have fought valiantly for our freedom and recognize those among us who have found their way back home." Tears welled in Robert's eyes as he absorbed her words. This was his moment, not simply as a soldier, but as a man reclaiming his place within life after years spent battling loneliness in silence. The parade continued with cheers erupting along every turn they took through town, with laughter rising amidst memories shared among brothers raised once more through heartfelt bonds formed anew strengthened by time spent walking hand in hand alongside each other throughout challenges faced together navigating life itself. Robert realized that this day marked more than just an event. It symbolized rebirth, a return home filled with love illuminating paths traveled toward healing awaiting exploration yet untraveled ahead inviting discovery waiting just beyond every curve rising bright inviting friendship rekindled forevermore. Echoing throughout lives touched by understanding gained through shared experiences woven tightly together forever binding futures bright ahead beckoning onward toward brighter tomorrows. Filled abundantly waiting just beyond horizons shimmering brightly overhead calling forth new adventures still awaiting exploration ahead. As the parade progressed, Robert felt a tide of emotions wash over him. Joy, nostalgia, and gratitude all mingled into a profound sense of purpose. The streets were alive with energy, vibrant decorations fluttering in the breeze, while the sound of cheers from the townsfolk reverberated off the buildings like music echoing through his heart. He had transformed from a man who had once hidden from his past to one now proudly displaying it for all to see, surrounded by friends who shared similar journeys. The sight of fellow veterans riding alongside him ignited memories of camaraderie from his service days. Each roar of a motorcycle echoed stories of resilience and bravery that the group had lived through together. As they rode through the town, Robert noticed how each smile and wave felt like a recognition of their sacrifices, not only those honored today, but also the unspoken battles each veteran faced in silence. This celebration was steeped in honor, turning what could have been an event filled with sorrow into a beautiful testament to life and friendship. Reaching the heart of town, they slowed down as they approached the central plaza, where crowds had gathered. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, waving flags and holding signs that read, "Welcome home," and "Thank you for your service." For Robert, those simple phrases resonated deeply. It wasn't just about being acknowledged. It was about finally feeling seen and valued after years of self-imposed exile from social interaction. Dismounting from Hector's bike, Robert was engulfed by the jubilant atmosphere surrounding him. As he stepped onto solid ground, applause erupted from the crowd, washing over him like a warm embrace that both fortified and humbled him. This moment represented so much more than just participation in a parade. It signified validation for the memories he carried, the laughter shared with friends lost and moments etched in time during treacherous days spent fighting for freedom. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Hector and other Iron Patriots members, as they exchanged heartfelt hugs, felt transformative. These gestures were rooted in mutual understanding, an acknowledgement of shared history that transcended words. In this welcoming sea of locals and veterans alike, Robert realized how essential these connections were. Each interaction reinforced feelings of acceptance and community he had long yearned for yet shied away from. When local dignitaries began addressing the crowd, Robert attentively listened as they honored both active service members and veterans present among them. The mayor recounted stories filled with valor that made their audience laugh and cheer, a sound Robert now embraced wholeheartedly. As she called out specific names from their town who had served bravely, reinforcing narratives surrounding camaraderie forged through conflict, Robert felt himself becoming part of something bigger than he'd imagined possible. "Today," she announced warmly, "we gather here not only to honor our heroes, but also to recognize those who find their way back home." The heartfelt sentiment enveloped him like a warm blanket on a chilly night, a powerful reinforcement that he belonged among these brave souls who had once walked similar paths mirroring his own. As the ceremony continued under bright blue skies stretching overhead, Robert's heart swelled with pride. No longer defined simply by grief or isolation, he now saw himself as part of an ongoing legacy. The threads connecting lives woven intricately together didn't merely symbolize battles fought on faraway shores. Instead, they extended into how healing begins once one steps outside long-standing fears, tethering individuals closely away from potential friendships waiting patiently beyond formerly locked doors. He recognized that embracing friendship wasn't just about receiving support. It required vulnerability, to show up authentically while seeking connections that could transform lives deeply affected by traumatic experiences endured through time. The parade marked an end point, while simultaneously characterizing an important beginning. A chapter filled richly with love, illuminating faces gathered proudly celebrating shared legacies, intertwined forevermore, transforming lives collectively lived intensely amid storms, weathered courageously throughout tumultuous seasons, entwined rising alongside others, navigating life together hand in hand again, rekindling aspirations soaring above, illuminating avenues ahead, beckoning toward futures bright. Lingering, inviting explorations waiting around every hopeful corner, calling forward each journey yet begun, waited for exploration anew alongside newfound brothers. Enduring joy rekindled, joyfully brightening life's roads, stretching endlessly, inviting toward adventures still yet discovered ahead.